Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. And if it's the first time you're here, welcome to the Smartnership platform. This is the platform where we're talking about how we can improve our negotiation, because we certainly can. I'm a firm believer in that we need to disrupt the way we're thinking about negotiation. As I'm often saying, we are basically negotiating like we did back in 1850s. And I think we could do it so much better. One thing that I've been thinking about in recent years is actually quite often I meet negotiators who don't actually really know their cost or their value. So when they are demanding something from the counterpart, for instance, a different delivery time or different terms of payment, I'm often asking them, what is the impact for you if we change the terms of payment? And they look at me and say, we don't really know. So it is a great pleasure and honor for me to welcome Todd here today. Todd is an expert within the field of value, and he's going to explain what value really is. I met Todd way back years ago at a conference in Europe where he spoke and I spoke, and I was truly impressed and amazed with Todd. He had an incredible career. So I'm so happy, Todd, that you took out some time to spend with me here today, talking a little bit about why this topic is actually important. Todd, could you share with our audience just a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Kel, first of all. Yes, I do remember meeting you in Europe a long time ago, but I come from industry. So I used to work with a big Swedish industrial conglomerate and a very technical organization, so engineered focus. And our team was good at talking to other engineers and customers, and negotiations were about technical things. And the procurement team was really just there to make it happen afterwards, make sure it was legal and the like. And over the 25 years, saw this evolution of purchasing, becoming procurement, becoming strategic, and looking and saying, hey, sales team, are you able to articulate your value? Can you prove your value? Can you quantify your value? Because asking the purchasing person to justify why you're 20% higher probably won't work. And then started working on the buy side. So I've got experiences on selling value, buying value. It's the same concept. It's about more value. We'll talk about what that means and how to measure it. So that's kind of what I focus on.
Sounds great, Todd. Once again, thank you for being here. My first question, Todd, really, would you agree with me that many negotiators, obviously not everyone, but many negotiators out there don't know their true value or cost when they step into a negotiation, a lot of the variables?
Very much so, very much so. And I think the one quote is, from a buyer side, and I believe we have the slide in here, if my memory serves me correct, but, I'm buying on behalf of a huge organization. How can I know your value? I don't know all those different variables. I mean, that's all you do, Kel, to sell this. Maybe you should work through what that's worth to me. And then, it's an incumbent upon the supplier to have a system and process and tools. Say, Mr. Customer, when I say value, I mean this. And by this, I mean this dollars. And putting some hard dollars to it. And then also on the buy side, like you said, I'm just going to negotiate because I have a KPI that says this is good or this is good. But yeah, good's one thing, but how good? Because right. if you're spending all this time, and I think we've had some interesting research over the years that we both been involved with, where it's like, wait a minute, the upside is this, but look what we're giving up. You're spending more to get less, pound foolish, those types of savings.
Right. Anyway, I'm excited, and so should our audience be, to hear what you have to share with us, Todd.
Okay, well, let's go through some slides. And again, I'm going to try to cover some examples from numerous different industries and best practices and the like. But this is the high level, a little bit of everything over Kels. So as you know, you see me or know me long enough that there's a lot behind this. So hopefully
I know.
At least starts a discussion in the thought process.
And I want to apologize to our audience as well. We have a limited amount of time, and Todd could spend days on this topic. So it's going to be a high pace trip through the whole thing. I know, Todd. I appreciate that.
Yep. So so you'll see a picture, cover of a picture of a book that's been recently put out called Value First Then Price: Quantifying Value in Business to Business Markets from both a buyer and seller perspective. I think there's some interesting takeaways. Again, value, and we'll talk about value. When I say value, I don't mean lowest price. When I say value, I don't just mean soft, warm, fuzzy feelings, even though you can quantify and put some weighting to that. But value, I mean dollars. Risk, these types of things. Supplier relation, I mean, it'll be more than just one, because sometimes when people are value, they go, soft and boring stuff. But I think what's really interesting here is it's the first book that I know of where it's not just sales, marketing, people saying, let's negotiate this way. Actually asking buyers, how do I think? How do I buy? Why do I do? Because maybe there's things that I do unintentionally that actually cause the wrong behavior.
Yeah.
So you can see from my title there, I used to be the global vice president of value. You hear a term from some industries called commercial excellence. I mean, again, who owns your negotiation strategy? Well, everybody does. My favorite, not everybody can own everything. If there's not somebody to drive it, improve it, to coach, support, it'll die. So my company said, you want to know what? Everybody's creating value, but we got to have somebody pull it all together, be that face of it, but constantly make it better.
Right.
So I look at kind of 4 areas. It starts with creating something that is of value, not just because it's neat and your engineers want to build it, because customers should figure it out. I think from there you need to calculate what that's worth to the customer. So you can frame the price difference versus the worth and say that's what it is. Communicate that value, equip the people that are buying with the business case so they can justify when they go to their management team, I didn't buy the lowest 3 bids, or I didn't negotiate this way, or I did this, or I've entered into a different commercial relationship because there's more value based on there. And I used to say capture value. If the sales team does work, they should get paid for it. And it was a professor, you'll hear me say, a guy named Jim Anderson, who's retired, but from Kellogg, say, the problem with the word capture is it reinforces this mindset that it's a zero-sum game. Todd, you just spent 15, 20 years telling me, and the research proves it's a win-win. Capture connotates a win-loss. So, actually, Jim, you're right. Both sides profit based on value. So you're going to hear me use a term called total profit added. It's an evolution of total cost of ownership. And I'll explain that more as we kind of delve through this.
Interesting. Is that a term that you coined, Todd?
Yes, it is. And let me yes, it is. And let me explain to you when I get to the slide. I think it helped kind of explain. When I said value before, I said, it's not just warm, fuzzy feeling. And if you were to take a bunch of people in a room and say, that's the value supplier, what does that mean? And this is not all encompassing, but I think you get the gist. That to some people, value means the lowest price, the store-bought brand, the good enough brand.
Right.
They're the low price airline. They're not the low cost airline. They might have a low cost. They're using that to be low price. That's not the same as value.
Right.
Okay. So I think it's a word that you have to stop and say. When I say value, I mean, I'm going to make you more profitable. Total cost of ownership is one measurement. I think there's more holistic stuff. So we all agree that value means, can be cost, but also there's other things on the upside, which I'll give you an example as we walk through a chart.
Right.
So this is a pulling together of 25 years around the world in different industries, asking salespeople's perspective. Okay. Why is procurement unable or unwilling to pay you for your value? That's the question. Okay. And the terms might change depending where I am, but the general synthesis is the following. Mr. Salesperson, I can measure price. I can't measure value. So I'm going to buy on price. Price is immediate. I care about this year, this quarter. Making my machine that's lasting 10 years, last 12 years is not my focus. I'm going to be retired by then, or will be bought and sold, or whatever reason. Variation, but price is guaranteed. Value is soft. Everyone's promised me these savings, and one person said, I could actually go to the bank with a price. I can't go to the bank with this value check.
Right.
I won't say the name of this customer, but he said, value programs take work. If I need to engage you on an ongoing relationship that's value-based, I got to talk to you.
Yeah.
Well, not me. You got to talk to our sales engineers and the smart people. But so I did, I said, yeah, that's true. It doesn't take much work to maybe threaten or to send out an RFQ or RF proposal or something like that, but this might take more time, so we'll have to figure out if it's worth more. This is an assumption that I hear everywhere, that the procurement is measured on unit price reduction, unit price variance, first price, last price, but small variations of this, not total cost of ownership, not value. That's how they're measured. People do what they're paid for. It's amazing. That's what they will do. And then that's kind of almost another thought, but I've merged it to save it. And I hate to say it, that's not my benefit. My company might benefit, but I'm measured on this. That will help them. And the offerings are substitutable. They look the same. They smell the same. They do the same thing. What value, Todd? I mean, you're starts with the C letter, but come on, let's not argue over which variation of these things we buy. So
Right.
my job on a business consulting perspective is to figure, are these true? So we'll come back at the end of these short slides, Kels, and hopefully say, these are a lot of assumptions that we both need to challenge ourselves with.
Sure.
So the first being, whenever you hear me say price or cost or value, they're three completely different words with three completely different meanings. Price is what you pay for something, $100, €100, whatever currency. Now, some people say, okay, yeah, that's the price. Now, cost would be that plus the taxation and the shipping and the receiving. But then you could see, how much ink does it use? How much water? How long does it last? All cost related things.
Right.
Value is kind of on the upside,
Mm.
things that are better. It might not be a cost reduction, but it might be a value improvement. So real quickly, I think this is funny. I was doing a variation of this at a procurement conference. And for the sales team people on here, I mean, I have the same discussion all the time. It doesn't matter if you're buy side or sell side. But procurement people say, I will ask my suppliers, how will you reduce my cost? 95% of them come back with a price reduction or terms and conditions. Like you said, shipping's included. I mean, some of them might be a little cost, but, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but every company that I've worked for, I want the sales teams to be able to say, Mr. Customer, do you want a price reduction or a cost reduction?
Yeah.
And if they say, I want a price reduction, I say, why? Well, we need more money. What if I got you more money a better way?
Yeah.
And, then I could tell a million stories. There are people that have bought the lowest price version and even bought the exact same thing and have not become more profitable. Those price savings have gotten lost somewhere magically. And, talk to a lot of CEOs, they get value all the time, to give these savings, but I'm not more profitable because a trade-off occurred somewhere that didn't allow it to happen. So,
right.
Ask yourself, can you have a clear understanding of what those are and how you affect them?
Right. Interesting.
So price, cost, and value.
I like those three, Todd. I also like what you said that we have a tendency to do what we're being measured on, right? Is that something you find is a bigger risk in major corporation compared to small and middle-sized companies, or is it a thing you find all over the place?
Well, I think you have smaller and mid-sized companies that might try to act, that's not wrong, but follow some best practices from big companies with all these KPIs. But what I like about a smaller company is I have probably a better chance of getting access to somebody that has the true stake. The CEO, Bob, who owns the company, usually, wait a minute, I want to have more money in my pockets. If you're telling me it costs me $10 more here, but you can save me $6 of energy for the next 10 years,
right?
Then I have a decision. Is it $10 now, but $6? I'll do that. That pays for itself in 17 months, Todd. If I get to a company, that's where the pointing goes. Well, that's not my benefit. So I actually find that smaller companies, there you also have to say is how much work am I going to do then to build the customized business case? There's nothing wrong with the sample. Mid-sized company that has 100 of these that was doing this looks like this. I mean, you might not have the time or effort. They might not want to do it. A lot of times in my personal life, I can make a value calculation subconsciously that just says better, price, difference, go. I don't have the time or effort, and it's obvious enough. So
sure,
I get that question a lot. Well, I don't have the time or effort to do this for every small customer. But
right.
One business case sample might be more than enough.
Sure. I have one more question, Todd, related to what you just talked about. These terms over here, I believe, I'm a firm believer, I'm an optimist perhaps, but I'm a firm believer that most people are intelligent, regardless whether it's in procurement or sales or project or whatever they. Why are these terms that is actually in theory quite simple, why are they sometimes so hard for people to understand?
Well, let me go to the next slide because I think the visual might help here, but I do have a bunch of slides and I don't have them that I'll be using today where people have actually used the wrong term. They've actually used the wrong term in advertising from Fortune 1000 companies. So a takeaway from today, whenever you see the word or say the word, stop and think, is that the right word? People transpose them all the time. They assume that if everything's the same and price is part of cost, if price goes down, cost will go down.
Yeah.
That was an assumption. I would like the lowest cost one. And I don't love saying it, but I say I could be the highest price, but the lowest cost.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I want. Well, that's not the same as lowest price, is it? Yeah, but we're making assumptions a lot of the time. And I think I'll give some examples of where do these assumptions come from?
Yeah.
And why do they exist?
Yeah. Interesting.
So the price berg, I love this. A colleague put this years ago for me. He goes, price. People can see it. It's obvious. There's all these things underneath the waterline that affect somebody's profitability. Profit, remember, profit is made up of cost and revenue and the difference. So total cost of ownership looks at one side of the balance sheet.
Yeah.
Some of the people listening here on the buy side or sell side might affect the revenue side.
Right.
Again, we'll get more specific. And here's where I hear from procurement people. And they said, you want to know why I look at price? You have never bothered to tell me what those things are below there.
Right.
You've never bothered to give me a reasonable assumption of what numbers to use.
Right.
I don't know what the value of local supply is versus foreign supply, as an example.
Right.
Well, we talked about that the last time we had a coffee about, we won't go into it now, but there's one company didn't know that's like, wow, we don't know. We don't know those numbers. Maybe you need to bring those to me and I could argue it's not $1,000 an hour, it's only 900, but you got to do your work, Mr. Marketing also and sales. When I say sales, I mean the front side of a company.
Right.
So my job is to say, I've got a smaller price berg. Let's focus on the price berg, not where the water line is.
Right.
That will make you more profitable.
Right.
So the model looks like this, and I'm going to walk through one example, then I'll explain different industries because the concept is extremely similar. You might just hear a variation of terminology. So give me some latitude here, but I used to present a variation of this slide and say it's total cost of ownership, which is a very IT background. So imagine if you're selling a server or software back in 1980 or something, you're saying, I'll save you people and speed and mistake, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
I was going through this slide of these different stages, and the stages in terms are different by industry or what we're doing, but conceptually you can get the logic. And I'd say, well, it's total cost of ownership, but it's better. And that's when Professor Anderson said, you can't keep saying the same term and then saying it's different. This is completely different, Todd. You're talking about making a customer more profitable. It's a bigger view. You better call it something different because saying TCO but different doesn't say it. So now hopefully people say, what do you mean by that? How does that work or something? So I trademarked it. It's in my books. It's in my papers. Everyone feel free, steal away. I mean, again, we all should be focusing on this. So let's assume there's a company that makes something. A laptop, a car, a house, a building, anything. Okay. Now, you might be selling into these people. So there's different ways that this stage goes through, but let's start with the simple version, I think, and then hopefully you can apply it. But somebody's going to build something. So they're going to take a bunch of parts and put them together to make that computer or car or whatever it is. And those design engineers are told by sales and marketing, what should the value of this product be? What price should it sell at? What functionality should it have? Here my competitors are. My customers care about energy savings, but they don't care about water, whatever it is.
Yep.
You've got a bunch of people sitting in a room that say, okay, fine. I'm going to make some design engineering decisions on, because, with enough money, they could build something that would last forever. They would make out of diamonds and titanium, but they're saying, whoa, it doesn't need to last 500 years. It only needs to last 15 years, right? So how easy can we manufacture it? Tolerance, design cost. But in general, the OEM, the person that builds these things, doesn't look at the value of time to market, creating something that's of value, different, that their customer cares about, that leads to either margin or sales or customer satisfaction. Total cost of ownership. Time to market isn't a cost reduction. Increasing the sell value more or dollars isn't a cost reduction. But if I was the CEO of a big company, I care about profit. So in some industries, time to market is extremely important.
Right.
My understanding is the high-tech world. You miss that, at least in North America. There's a big cell phone buying season, which happens to be September, I guess. Kids back to school. Then you have the Christmas buy. You miss that because your supplier didn't deliver quality or risk or whatever they did. That's huge. If you're in the pharmaceutical industry, what do you think time to market is? It's everything. You get a patent for, I think it's 10 years, but whatever it is. If it takes you 6 months because the packaging and production company can't build it, it's huge. So different industries, different impacts.
Right.
Maybe you could help them make a product that uses less energy. They might not get that energy savings, but the person that uses the product does. So how do I work through that person that builds it? So somebody builds it. Now somebody's going to buy it.
Mm.
So it's the acquisition phase. And I think
Mm.
just real quickly, Kels, sorry about trying to make it quick. Hundreds of years ago, I'm on stage in South Africa. I remember it. And the CEO of the company I work for, first time he actually had to listen to me for 90 minutes, like not just have a quick CEO conversation. And he grabbed me afterwards and he goes, I need you to work with our procurement team. And I said, why, Tom? And he goes, we are able to measure value for our customers across 400 variables, blah, blah, blah. Now, my procurement team, I pay them every year to do this. Their bonus is based on TCO value. But I can tell you, Todd, at the end of the year, there's no more money. It gets lost somewhere. So let's take a look at everything we measure on the sales side and compare that to what we're measuring on the buy side.
Mm.
It's a learning exercise.
Yeah.
So I sent an email back to the chief procurement officer, Swedish gentleman, and you could feel his response in his email. Like, who is this salesperson going to tell me that, hey, our boss, Tom, wants us, da 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 da. I could say his name because he's in my book. His name is Bo Inge Stenson, great guy. But I go meet him. I say, just show me what we measure. Just show me what we measure. And he goes, in general, the price that meets the requirement.
Mm-hmm.
Requirement is, but what's the minimum order quantity? Is there an inventory carrying cost? Will they take the stuff back? Is there a return policy? Am I exposed to currency risk? Who pays the shipping? In our world, as we would sell stuff to manufacturers, they wanted us close to them. So I don't want to be building something in Sweden and shipping it to India because the customers in India, they want response time, finance charges, so these types of things. They said, Boinga, great start. That is total cost of acquisition, which is a small component of total cost of ownership, which is small cost of this. And he goes, well, show me what you guys on the sales side do. It's okay. So somebody built it. Now somebody's going to buy the something, whatever they're going to buy. And at this phase, something gets installed, operated, and maintained. It gets used. Okay. Now, everybody on the call on the sales side, this will be different for different customer segments. Okay. But you should start to see some similarities. How much energy does the machine use? How much water? How much ink? Think OPEX. Product life. How long will it last? Auxiliary repair cost. Can it fail nicely?
Yeah.
Rule of thumb, and I'm a rule of thumb person because I'm not a technical person, but if you can predict when something will fail, it's 90% cheaper to repair than if you let it run to failure.
Interesting.
What about spare parts? I know there are some companies that will price their offering low price because they figure that's what everybody's focusing on. And then say, well, now you need parts, and you can only buy those parts from me. I don't know how well this translates around the world, but the razor blade idea. I'll get in your hand. You can't switch the razor blades between different people, or but services and these types of things. Right. So this will be different. And then finally, disposal. All the initial research in TCO didn't look at disposal. You take something and you throw it away. I first looked at this because some people in the industrial lubricant world told me it was twice as expensive to dispose of used oil and grease as it was to buy the stuff. Wow. And I was like, no way. Well, maybe if I'm buying a machine, I should buy a machine that you don't need to lubricate. There's a way to do it. I'm not an engineer, but it's blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, if I included that cost, it makes a whole different decision. Right. If you're buying a car, is it the price of the car that matters? Yeah. It's got two options. One's a 60,000, one's a 50,000. They both look the same. All the same. We've got operating cost, fuel, insurance, depreciation. What is that car going to be worth is the biggest factor in that calculation. I'll buy the $60,000 car that worth $40,000 in 3 years versus the $50,000 car that's worth $20,000. Absolutely. For disposal. And in some industries, the circular economy, maybe I can refurbish that asset. Yeah. Maybe I could sell that asset. Sure. Whatever. Again, don't have the time to go through it all here, but no, I understand. But in the medical world, total cost of care, renewable energy world, levelized cost of energy. Where's my total expense? What's my total revenue? What's the difference? Make a decision. Right. Todd, sorry, a quick question. Based on your year-long and broad experience, I know it's a difficult question, this one, but how many organizations, if we look at procurement, do you feel and have experience actually professional in going through what you just described on the slide right here? I can say, and again, because it's been an evolution over the last 20-something years, Our company we signed over 200 agreements that are based on this, that actually had fee at risk. The logic, they said yes, they said is we don't know how to calculate it.
Yeah.
So, okay, and then you have to go through it. The calculation, just so you know, and this is a quick, important comment, is people will say, but yeah, I'm different. The formula for energy savings is the same everywhere in the world. I don't care where you live. It's different by industry. I don't know. There'll be certain industries where energy is a very small component, so it might not be worth the focus. And the number in the calculation might be different.
Yeah.
But let's not start off that everything is so different we can't start from somewhere.
No.
And then finally, I say, I don't need the exact number. The average cost for this machine or this downtime or this industry is this number.
Yeah.
I don't need yours, maybe.
No.
It's good enough. We're looking at relative difference between two options. So
Yeah.
again, the sales team, engineers, smart people, whatever you call them in your company, you've got to bring some of this data or ideas to the customer, because again, that procurement person, they've got their head spinning. They're involved in everything. I mean, between one day they're buying cell phones and they're buying office supplies and they're buying company cars. I mean, how can you expect them to be an expert?
Right.
So you see the visual at the top right there, the 4 different stages, and time versus cost or value. The question is, where are the real big numbers?
Right.
So this is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Accenture did this, and they said, okay, let's look at 4 different types of asset classes.
Mm-hmm.
On the far left is aircraft, so Boeing, Airbus, Bombardier, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Class 8 trucks, just in case people want to use this slide, is big 18-wheelers, like international truck or something. Industrial equipment, fans, gearboxes, motors, conveyors, pumps, and then light-duty pickup trucks for work.
Right.
They said, what's my total? And they say cost. They don't talk about revenue, but it's one of those things they might have backed in here. But if I was to look at an airplane over the life of the airplane, only 8% of the cost is buying the airplane.
Wow.
92% of it is running it.
Wow.
Fuel being the biggest cost.
Yeah.
Right. So if anybody remembers when fuel, at least in North America, excuse me, that's my reference point here, but when oil was $4 a gallon, the airlines were taking good planes and beaching them, putting them in the desert so they didn't rust. It was cheaper to buy a new plane.
Right.
They would sell those planes off to countries where fuel cost was less, or somebody could do the calculation.
Right.
So Class 8 trucks, so industrial equipment.
Right.
And now same company, and I get asked to be involved in the buying process of something. The 3 bidders come in, these machines that we needed to buy, and they're all going to meet the minimum criteria, et cetera, et cetera. And chief procurement officer says, well, what do you think? And I decide that my analysis, quote unquote, says we should buy the more expensive one that was, say, 10% more expensive. Of course, that gets a laugh. The sales guy doesn't care about the price. He's going to buy the more expensive one. I said, no, they showed us that it was, and I'm going to make up numbers, 3.8%, a small number, but let's just say 2%. Because that was the example that I always use. It was 10% higher in price, but it was 2% less in operating cost. And I remember the comment, Todd, why? 10% is bigger than 2. Like, yeah, you need the denominator, because it turns out that 10% of 12, 1.2, is not as big as 2% of 88. It's about 45% bigger. The 2% is worth 45% more.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, what if it's only, because I think they were showing 4%. I'm like, even if they're only half right, it's still 40% better.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of like, show me where I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get rid of labor as part of the calculation. The thing still pays for itself.
Right. Right.
But again, if you're a small part of that big machine or big offering or big whatever it is, you have to have your denominators right. And then again, you can measure these things and affect them. But again, I do a lot of work around this. It's called reframing, but wow, maybe we're missing it. And it's not procurement's fault. They assume that every machine would have the same energy, or the suppliers would say this one's 97% efficient, and that one's 98.
Right.
Anything with a non-engineer like me, I don't know what that means. If there's not a dollar number, I'm not smart enough to figure out what 1% efficiency is. Do the work for me, and then you can put the asterisks based on this factor or that factor. But don't expect me to do the calculation, because I can't. That's not my role.
Right. Interesting.
And funny enough, there's a lot of this research in a lot of different industries. I mean, part of that's what I do, but I mean, again, you don't need, real quickly, because I know time's an issue, but I'm doing this slide. It was in Europe at a railway conference. And we get to this thing, and I said, well, I don't know railway. And a gentleman from Asia jumps up, professor, and he goes, well, just so you know, Todd, we've done the analysis, and the initial price of the train and the boat, whatever, blah, 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 was 12.82%. So I smile. Okay. I said 12%. Call it 13. It's close enough. And then the German professor that was sitting beside him, they must have been friends, hand goes up and he jumps up. And now there's going to be an engineering discussion between the two of them that one said to the other one, no, it's only 12.643%. I start laughing on stage going, I'm sorry, the 0.2% is not the big point here, guys. I mean, you don't need to be perfect. You need to start somewhere.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You do a sensitivity analysis if you need to. And for the procurement people that are watching and for the sales, I think this is something to really rethink. So famous article, 83, Peter Crowley creates the Crowley Matrix, Harvard Business Review. Here's how we should segment our suppliers. Based on the segmentation, we should negotiate with them differently. And the original article has spend, x-axis, dollars. Take everyone. Okay, I'm a big paper mill. Just as an example, I'm gonna take everything I buy and put the real big stuff, dollars, probably energy and chemicals and raw materials, I don't know, down here, and then the real small stuff over here.
Right.
And then everybody looks at risk. The original thing said business contribution, but they look at risk, and risk being substitutability. If that supplier doesn't play nice, I mean, Kels got, your walk away point, how easy substitutable is it? I mean, there's a bunch of terminology here, but
yep.
We should take every one of our suppliers and put them in these 4 buckets and negotiate differently, treat them differently. So small dollar, small risk, 5 suppliers, all local, one goes bankrupt, the other guy comes in the next day. I'm simplifying, but I don't have the time or effort to do a deep dive here. Let's keep it simple, summary billing. I don't want to even see it.
Right.
Big dollars. I'm going to leverage you. I'm going to use different negotiation tactics because they're substitutable. There's 5 of you, whatever suppliers, and I'm going to use every trick I can to create tension. Okay. As a salesperson, I would love to be in the spot, even though I might not be big dollars to you, big customer. You can't leave me. I mean, for numerous reasons. There's a shortage of supply, chips in today's world, or medicines. Maybe. I mean,
right.
There's a long lead time to switch. There's switching costs that are very risky.
Right.
We'll get it in a joint venture. We'll do something, long-term contracts, write a first supply stuff. And then the holy grail that every salesperson wants to be, and every procurement wants to focus on, is the strategic partnership.
Yep.
You're important to me. I'm important to you. We need to spend some time together. All makes sense, except for one little thing, in my opinion. Sorry, Kel, my opinion is that spend is the wrong axis. It should be profit impact. Because because I don't know these industries, but let's say I'm buying energy. In some countries you buy energy, a big cost, I can switch. There's 3 suppliers, they're all just as reliable. $10 million switch that's 0.1% is a dollar amount. You could be walking over the supplier that I'm just going to say is 5 million or 10 million. I might only tell you 10 million, but I could maybe affect your profitability by 20 million. Not by cheaper price stuff, but by increasing your machine life or through whatever your value proposition is. So size of supplier is not an indication of the value opportunity they bring. Too often we assume that there's a correlation.
Right.
And the way around this is for procurement just to ask. If we chose you, how much more profitable could you make our business? Not by lower price. No. And now all I would say is if you expect me to do a 20-day engineering project, I'm going to charge you for that. But I think it's fair to ask, do you have systems, processes, and tools? And not just the guy that says, hi, look at me, but I'm going to come in and actually find these opportunities, design for Six Sigma, value engineering, whatever. There's a bunch of different tools. And the sales team should have that available to say, I know you're focused on this, but maybe we need to look at this. So just saying, maybe relook at your supplier base. Because again, I don't sell like office supplies, but maybe there's an office supply person that says, there's a whole big opportunity here. How would you know? How would I know? Because I'm making an assumption that it's substitutable and there's 5 of them. Hopefully there's a takeaway there.
Right. Todd, one quick question on this one. Again, a difficult question to answer, but if you should put a percentage on these, where would you say the majority of the world's commercial negotiation would happen? In which of
That's a good question. I'm gonna say probably in the security section, because you're talking joint venture, you're talking co-investment, where we build a factory together. I mean, again, I'm not an expert in. I mean, Tesla has got a partnership. I don't remember who with the battery. Like, I mean, that's we're holdco together.
Right.
So I can see that there. I see it in the strategic world where the contracts go back and forth 50 times. But I mean,
Right. Right.
you know, if you hit a threshold dollar-wise in some companies, you have to have a contract.
Right.
The nuisance stuff you might be able to get away with, even a non-contract or a frame of work, or I hate a lower person in the organization can probably put a 3-page contract through. Your strategic suppliers that are critical to your product, like all that, there's probably more stuff there. But I think another way, just I'm not sure this is your question, is to figure out what percentage of your suppliers or your customers. So real quickly, my old company, we thought that revenue wise, that 60-40 rule, that 50% of your revenue comes from the top 10% of your customer type thing, that calculation. Well, they're strategic, they're big. Just because you're big doesn't mean you're strategic, but let's stop there. And the other one, so 90% of the volume. So I'm doing a session as a consultant for one of my customers for their sales team. And this is true. This customer bought a fair amount in our from us. It was a big dollar customer, right? And he goes, I told procurement what you were coming to do, and they were glad that we were getting some great stuff for a deal, but you're not on our strategic supplier list. And I said, really? And I had done this slide before the coffee break. And he laughs. He goes, you're in the nuisance bucket, I think. Maybe you're somewhere in between. You're important, but we spend more money on travel for our sales team than we spend on the stuff that you guys make. Travel, who cares what airplane you get on? Well, actually I do, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like, because of your assumption is you're that. And, again, I've even got to the point where I could see by the way the customer's acting. I'm like, okay, you got me in the wrong box. Let's stop and think that and the like. So
that's a good one. Okay.
Well, I do have this slide in here, and I think, this great organization, Huthwaite, UK based, did a day years ago, but they had procurement people and salespeople there. And this lady, Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, she was at the time with AstraZeneca. I think she's just now at, you can read it, but I will read it because it's so powerful.
Sure.
Suppliers don't come to us with a business case. It's what we want. Sell your values and our numbers to your attention. If you can't quantify your value, don't be surprised at the failure of procurement to do so.
Right.
I cannot think of anything more clear and poignant. I mean, so when sales teams tell me the customer wants to talk about price trade-off negotiation, threatening, what have we done to show them there's value outside of that? Right. Well, we told them that we're 100 years old. We told them that we did. Okay, that's not value, guys. Did you put $1 to it?
Right, exactly.
Well, no, we can't. Well, if you can't, why would they? I mean, don't expect your client to do the job. I don't have the time today, but you can do it. It's not as impossible as it sounds. I know there's variables, but you can do it.
Yeah, that's a great one. Great quote.
Yes. So from a pricing perspective, we're negotiating. Price does become part of it. And, a lot of industry still uses cost-based models. What's my cost to produce? What's my marginal cost? Who's pushing who towards which side here type stuff. Competition. I always love competition based. I hear that my competitor's this, so I can be that. The first two have nothing to do with value, by the way. The most common pricing strategies don't. The value one, I like this. This is actually the co-author, editor of the book, Andreas, who's a pricing expert, said, value-based pricing is where the supplier brings the business case and says, by buying this, here's the value we receive, longer life, whatever those things are. And here's an example that it's worth more, and kind of the end. You pay me up front, Keld. You said, you're good. Here you go. Here's your money. And I'm taking all the risk reward. It could do better than you expected. It could do worse, but good enough. And then we get into performance and outcome based, different, but for today's time, close enough that says, okay, I'm going to pay you 80% of your fee now, but as you hit these milestones or these value realizations, I'll pay you more. Not back up just to the 100%, but there's got to be a risk reward winning side. Right. I think the pricing model needs to align with the value model. So the sales team could say they're the best in the world, but if they're not willing to put any risk or fee there, I challenge it. I know the value requires the customer to actually do what you told them to do, like to realize that co-invention. But I think every company should have some sort of commercial offering that is contingent on this. And again, the buyer might say, no, I see the business case, I see the reward. Why would I give you part of it when it happens? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having that relationship. Other might say is every salesperson's been in here with all the value stuff. I'll pay for it when it happens. Okay. And again, there's contracting ways around this and things to do it. And just again, the slide just to have, variable pricing, which is much more, time specific, think of Uber. I mean, again, static pricing for the year. Okay. But now how you order from me might have a big effect. You lump all your orders to the end of the year and there's a seasonality. That's going to be different. I mean, so I can see the pricing model aligning more with the commercial model.
Right.
And as we come to the end here, Kels, I got 2 slides. I'm not going to go through all this. I'm going to go to the high level of it. Okay.
Sure.
Closing slide. This says procurement. What I've just been talking about is right for you. You will make more money doing this. So in the very top left, there's an North American Association for Big Manufacturing Companies. 2013, it turns out they did a chief procurement officer summit in Florida where they asked me to be the keynote speaker. And a questionnaire went out. I've got all this backup information I can share with people, but do you have a structured methodology, Mr. CPO, Chief Procurement Officer, to buy best value, or yes or no?
No.
And structured means every time we buy something, everyone doesn't have an Excel spreadsheet of making up their own models. We've decided we care about this. We've decided we'll weight these things. We've decided energy's worth. I mean, we've got something. And these are Fortune 1000 public companies. Companies that had a structured methodology to choose based on best value were 35% more profitable than the companies that didn't.
Wow.
You could buy a higher price thing.
Wow, yeah.
If you remember that 4-stage slide, they asked, do you measure disposal costs? Do you measure energy usage? Ask for performance-based agreements. Again, I don't have all the details here, but it's available. It's like, wow. The orange colored book there called Vested Outsourcing.
Yep.
A professor from University of Tennessee, which Kels knows very well, better than I do, but Kate Vinistek's work is around this. What's in it for we? Let's work together. Again, the same thing here. State of Flux is a UK based. I love this one. Suppliers that implemented a SRMs, supplier relationship management program. Engage suppliers regularly, you treat them with respect, and tell them where you're going, these types of things. They got 4 to 6% more value. Remember, value not being warm and fuzzy, but real value, hard dollar stuff that the people didn't do it for. 4 to 6%. If 50% of your cost, Mr. Customer, are your suppliers coming in, and you could do that, you just affected your bottom line by 2 to 3%.
Yep.
That's 20% of your profit by changing how you buy.
Yep.
And the last one I love, and the logo's changed because what it was done was called IACCM. Now it's called World Contracting. But they said from SAMA, sales, strategic account management found that buying companies said they realized 40% more value from their most strategic suppliers, and suppliers, salespeople said they bring 49%.
Wow.
Kels, let's average it. Let's drop it. I don't care. I mean, whatever those numbers are, they're far in greater extent than 3 bids and a buy. I know I'm going to pay you in 30 days. I'm going to extend you as long as I can. It's like there's all this money here. If all my time is going to be spent dealing with contentious issues,
sure,
it's not going to happen. And that's probably a key point from my takeaway from being in industry is if you can get frame agreements with customers that are focused on value, then you can unleash the power of your company on the buying side and using side.
Right.
Find it. That's where the real, the money hits the road. So every time contracts go back and forth for a year and people are changing their mind, like, you know how much money just didn't get saved or created because of this?
Right.
And right in the middle, I won't go through it, but Professor Robert Hanfield says this is the thing. Professor Thomas Choi for the Center for Advanced Procurement Studies at Arizona State University, by the way, was actually there when I came up with TPA for the first time.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yep. We did a session at Oxford. And I said, I'm trying to profit. And he goes, that's the right word. Profit I care about. Because originally I think it was total value added. Remember the slide that said, but everybody doesn't understand what value is? I mean, you just said profit. Maybe you should call it profit.
Yeah.
So either way, kind of a summary there. Real quickly, value merchants. This is on the selling side. Remember, and these aren't at the cost of the other person. This is win-win. Monitor Deloitte did a study that said companies that take a value approach versus a good enough volume market share approach are 24% more profitable.
Right.
Flat out. increase your closing rates. I mean, again, you're going to your customer saying, buy mine. If you give them the business case, maybe they can justify why they're spending time with you, why they didn't buy the lowest bid, etc. Less discounting, all these types of things. And again, my old boss said, hey, we've got to be able to prove this. We can't just rely on the relationships in history where we've done it. We can constantly be there saying, here's why we're worth more. So I think one of the takeaways from the book that I talk about is, if for the companies on the sales side or the buying side, I actually have the same slide. I didn't put it in there, but from a buying perspective is, I could real quickly say, when you're on a sales side, you need to understand what value you can deliver for your customer. You must have a checklist. Well, this, and what is that worth? Saying I'm going to do something that'll make it nicer or quieter, I can quantify that. But if you can't put a number to it, value on the buying side. What do we care about? Is it part of your selling process? Early, high, engage, measure is a part of your buying process. You have a tool. That's something I work on as a structured tool for the buyer or the seller to have. So everybody's not creating their own Excel spreadsheets. The formulas are all there. The references are there. I mean, you shouldn't have to go figure out what the value of something is. Again, the formula should be there.
Right.
It should be training on the buy side and the sell side.
Right.
The ongoing sales compensation on both sides. On both sides. If you measure me to sell volume, I will cut a price. It doesn't mean I'll come and deliver the value. What's in it for me to come on Friday night and sit down with you and say, are you realizing what, again, we've made it a transactional relationship. I might walk by that opportunity to make you more profitable because I'm not rewarded. On the buy side, again, you've assumed that a lower price means I'm going to get something. So the compensation model, which we can talk about. Right. Value buying options on the buy side and sell side, risk reward type things. Very lucky. My old CEO's business culture was, this is who we are. If we can't do this, then we can't expect to get paid more. And again, the good chief procurement officers I've seen said, this is what I've wanted always. I don't want to buy 3 bids in the lowest price, but I don't know how, and our suppliers haven't helped us do anything but that. Right. And then finally, customer culture. Stopping and rethinking that Crowley Matrix. Where are these people? Is there something there that I'm missing? Maybe I should have rethought that. I don't know. So with that, these are my answers to those points. You can measure value. You need a structured tool and process to do it, but you can measure value. It's not warm and fuzzy. You can make it guaranteed. Kel, this year I will deliver this much value. Doesn't matter if it's in January, the value is delivered, or December. We might have to do a little proration, but come on. Value doesn't mean 20 years down the road. I can say this year I'm going to guarantee it, which takes away your risk. I'm going to make it hard. I'm not talking about a feeling or giving you free something that I wasn't charging, but I'm going to make it hard. We just have to agree on what that is. It takes work. I don't have the slide in here, but in my old world, if I guaranteed you value, let's just say it was 5% a year, that's worth 15% versus the 5% because it's every year. Yep. So 5% held for 5 years or 5% every year. Wonder why the person that has the ongoing value agreement isn't worth more. And for procurement people, you're hit with annual targets every year. You take a bucket of goods, you buy it, and you get a great deal. What are you going to do next year? All the companies I've ever worked for, thank you for what you did last year. What are you going to do next year? If I've got one supplier committed that they're going to deliver 5% improvement every year, not on price, but on value, I don't have to worry about that anymore. And I've actually had my procurement friends call me and says, I'm in trouble. I have no more leverage here. How do I? Well, it's because, again, the contract has not been aligned to focus on value. Right. I'm not saying I've won every order, but usually if procurement people go back to their boss and say, yeah, this company, it's hard, it's measurable. I said, whoa, that's what I wanted. Price becomes the default because nobody was measuring the value, or the value they were measuring wasn't earnings per share value, it was feeling value. Sure. But I've never come back where they said, whoa, that actually is like real stuff. We want that. So, right. Again, terminology. Do you need a price saving or well, that's no. There's something there. And the offerings are the same or similar. Okay, hey, sales team, you got to get off your behind to do the work to prove, and it might not be the product. The value could be in here. The systems, processes, and people. It's like you both bought the same laptop, the same specifications from 2 different suppliers. One might be able to do much better. I'm not an expert of how they do it, what they do, why they do it. So it's our job, our pricing models that should pull it together. So with that, price is an issue in the absence of value. I believe value has to be quantified. If it's not, we're asking somebody to make an assumption and a feeling. Right. Most of your, the last thing I'll say here is to prove my theories, everybody go to their boss this week and say, I want to buy something for 200,000 and see what the response is. Why? Where? What's the benefit? You know, I mean, if it's because I want it, because it feels nice, I'm probably not going to get it. But if you come in with a business case, here's the break even, here's the cash flow, here's why, you'll at least have a better discussion. So with that, I mean, the book's great. Amazon in any country, you can grab it, or anywhere else you buy books. My email's at the bottom there. The website's got a bunch of videos on there and stuff, not near as cool as all of Kels stuff, but it's got some stuff on there, little videos and stuff like that. And this is what I help people do. You know, how do you quantify value? How do you negotiate on it? And how do you measure it so you can get paid for it? So Kel, hopefully we have time. Questions, comments. Let's go.
It was outstanding, Todd, as usual. And as everybody can hear, we could spend hours and days on this topic because Todd has so much enormous amount of information that he could share with everybody. So unfortunately, Todd, we have to cut it off. But I really enjoyed everything. It makes sense. It's logic. I have a question, Todd. It is so logical and yet so difficult for so many to implement in their organizations. And I was, while you're doing this, I was just sitting here thinking, everybody needs Todd. I mean, most organizations I'm working with need somebody like you to come in and work with them briefly. Just, you know, help them out, figuring out and basically change the focus because, you know, we can all agree that water runs downwards, right? So it is obviously the top executive that need to change their mindset on how we measure the staff, because I'm sure, Todd, you probably experienced the same thing I have, that you're working with a level in an organization, they all get it and says, Todd, I completely agree with you. The challenge is I have to go back into my company and my top management won't get it. They will just tell me to go and get a better price.
Yep.
If we should wrap up by one simple advice, what could we tell these poor people that have to return to their organizations and convince them and negotiate internally that they need to change their mindset?
Yep. I'm going to sum it up on the sales side first, and then I'll come from the buy side just to keep it different, because the sales side I lived. One, I mean, you know, start small and get a win. Just, you know, again, but, you know, the way there's two key takeaways. One was, and my CEO would say this, how many different ways does our sales team equipped have systems, tools, and processes to negotiate on price, do trade-offs, different hierarchy, different authority? Have I given them one tool not to discount and guarantee value? No. Well, maybe that's why they're going to what they can. Todd, there's no way I could prove my value. I don't have a tool. We won't guarantee it in the contract. Well, maybe that's why I revert to what I can and have.
Right.
From a funding perspective, and again, I'm repeating my old boss, he goes, you have no idea of how much money we're talking about here. Think of your clients. I'm not saying everyone's going to buy and nobody's going to care about price anymore, but if you would just sit at home and do a quick what if, what are our total sales? What percentage of those sales have a functional discount? On average, by how much? You'll get the size of the prize. And then you can just ask your team, I'm going to make up numbers, Cal, but if we're this billion and it's this, it's $100 million problem.
Right.
Okay. So sales team, if we had a tool, again, I don't want just a tool, but a tool and a training and a person to support in the commercial negotiations. God, if we could get one deal, it pays for all that.
Right.
Kind of a, wow, you're kind of right. And the final thing I have there is, I mean, from a culture change, you need somebody to own it internally. And one thing that I've learned is you can't have somebody own something unless that's all they do.
Right.
You can't be a part-time. So of course, as I start, Todd, you're going to do what you do. Plus you're going to do this. Got our first big order. We didn't discount. We guaranteed value. It worked out to 1.2 million EBITDA cash.
Right.
For 5 years. And I had a new job the next day.
Right.
You could do that with one client in North America. Imagine what we could do for so many more. Well, I mean, once it became a full-time job, it's amazing how it was like, boom. I am seeing in certain industries this commercial excellence role,
right,
where it's really trying to tie all that together. And, you know, sales team, I'm going to negotiate. Who can I talk to? Here's my roadblock, Kel. What do you think? You know negotiation and you've got the tools and the systems, but having that person I can go to, not to be, you know, you're doing it bad, but have you thought about coming around this way? Or I've done this before or something. So programs at bigger companies, at least without somebody driving it, die. They get stale, they get old, it's corporate, die. So someone's got to own it for it to happen. The buy side, the same thing. I put those slides in there for that purpose. That slide, all the logos on it, but I mean, wow.
Yep.
I mean, there's the proof point. This is what it's worth.
Right.
So sit there and say, hey, let's just start thinking this way a little bit differently. Let's maybe choose one or two suppliers. And the
Right.
easiest way to do it is in your RFQs, RFPs, just ask for it.
Yeah.
How will you help differentiate and make us more profitable? Please be prepared to discuss. I mean, you don't need a huge thing, but what salespeople will tell me is the procurement team never asked me specifically for this, so I didn't do it. Do we have a miscommunication problem here, people?
Right.
Maybe. If you tell me you're going to weight it, you tell me it's important, you tell me you want to see how I measure it, make it happen. Your
Right.
suppliers can maybe do the work for you. Now you can go back to your management team and say, okay, look, I know we have a budget, but they're going to commit to this. Maybe we move the money from here to here to here. And my old C goes, I'm not spending all my time moving money around. If it's good for the company, we're doing it. Because I'm not going to stop doing something good for the company because of the way we're silo structure.
Right. Right.
Hopefully there's something in there for people to
Absolutely
grab a hold of.
Todd, thanks a million. I love your enthusiasm. I love your expertise. It is very important work you're doing. Thank you so much for taking time out and joining me here today. Thank you, Todd, and good luck in the future with everything.
Thank you, Kels, and keep up the work with the partnership focus. It gets people to think differently.